Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My guest this week is Jeff Strachan. We are talking all about living with purpose. In the show, Jeff shares some amazing experience from life and also from a recent adventure he did riding his bicycle around Rwanda. Although, to be honest, we talk about that probably only about 10% of the show. We talk all about purpose, discipline, figuring out what your values are, your decision-making process, and basically a load of different things that hopefully make you think a little bit more about your life and help you to gain some clarity on what purpose means for you. Before we hop into today's show, I have some announcements. Yes, this is a new section of the show where I'm going to do my very best to keep you up to date with what is going on in not the world, well, maybe sometimes the world, but definitely the world of InnerFight. Things that you might need to be involved in or want to be involved in, or that you might quite like to know. I'll definitely miss some things, but I'll try and keep you as informed as possible. Today, if you're listening to the show this morning as it comes out on Friday, then you definitely need to be involved in our Final Fridays and Iftar this evening. It is on tonight from 4:30, this afternoon from 4:30. Iftar will be served at 6 p.m. If you're listening, or 6:30 p.m. when it's Iftar, obviously. If you're listening to this show after Friday the 31st and you missed out, I am very sorry that you missed out. I will give you more notice for the next one. I'll start now. There won't be Iftar with the next one, but there will be Final Fridays, which is a fun community workout for absolutely everyone. Everyone's invited. It is on, you might have guessed it, the final Friday of each month. Sorry if that comes across a little bit sarcastic. Don't forget it next month if you're listening to the show after Friday. What else is going on? The Ramadan challenges are going on in the gym. There are 4 different challenges. You need to pick a partner and get them done. If you did not see the advertising on Instagram, the reel that we put out for this, I'm very sorry that you didn't see it. It's some of our finest work as coaches and humans. 4 different challenges. You can do them all in one go. You probably would be a little bit tired if you did that. You just need a partner. You need to keep the same partner. Speak to the rock stars at the front desk and they will tell you all about it. There are slightly different timings for children's classes over the spring break. Speak to the guys at the front desk. All of this is updated in MindBody, by the way. If you don't use the MindBody app, please get the MindBody app. You'll know exactly what is going on. And there are some new caps in stock. You all know that I love caps, the Patagonia caps, which I've been wearing. I first got the Patagonia caps in 2018. I wore one for every single one of my marathons, the most comfortable running cap I've ever had. They went out of stock globally for a couple of years. They're now back in stock. That's a lot of time on a cap. We will move on. That is all the announcements for this week. Please do me one favor or 2 favors, or one of 2 favors. 1, go to Google, rate InnerFight, give us a Google review. Secondly, share this podcast with one person if you think it's worth it. This is episode number 799 of the InnerFight podcast. Enjoy the show. Jeffrey, welcome.
Marcus, thank you very much.
I'm excited, mate.
Nice to be.
We've got lots to talk about.
We have. It's nice to be sat at your dinner table.
It's we even got the floodlights on as well, so we can.
I feel like I'm being interrogated here. That's like right on my ginger head. I can feel it.
Mate, you look good in the video.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of
I had a
course.
shower today, so.
Mate, what is purpose?
It's a tricky one, right? It's a really tricky one.
That's why I got you here.
Yeah. Look, it's super tricky. When we think about, you can get into the whole existential debate, right? Why are we here? What's our purpose? Who do we serve? Are we serving family? Are we serving people around us? We can go miles here, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how many minutes we've got.
Well, you've got a real job. I've got a fake one. So.
Yeah, look. Ultimately, it comes back to yourself. You know, who are you serving? What are you serving? What are you here for? What are you doing on a daily basis? What's your purpose? You know, and some people, they bring that back down to their kids, You know, they bring that down to their significant other, their family, their friends, their mates. You know, it could really go anywhere. I think the important thing is not what it is. It's, are you doing something about it more than anything? But that's what I think.
Because increasingly purpose is something that, or not increasingly, we've always known about having a purpose, having a direction. Let's go back to the beginning. Where does it actually get born? Where does it start? Are we innately born knowing, or do we become influenced? Do we become positively or negative?
Well, look, I think 100% we become influenced. I think there's formation periods, and definitely early on in life, there's a formation period. And I think that's where, you know, things like discipline, standards, those things are probably built in that very formative period from, 3-4 years old through to 9-10 years old. Yeah. And those things, I feel, stay with you forever. And I think if you think back to those earliest formation periods, for me, I have very distinctive smells that resonate with me. And
Really?
For example, smells like grass, right?
Yeah.
When I smell cut grass, I immediately think sport. I think get outside. I think, that purpose. And there's another smell which is very distinctive for me, the smell of liniment, right? So you don't even remember what liniment is. You call it deep heat,
like
right?
Deep heat, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
so,
come on, man.
yeah.
I'm not that young.
But if you give me that smell of liniment,
Yeah.
it's changing rooms, it's sport, it's everything that comes with that. And those smells that you can attach with, they come from very, very early formative years.
Yeah.
So I think that period is critical. But then, of course, you go through so much, swings and roundabouts, university life, family life, incidents that happen in your life. They'll change your purpose. You'll swing around. At points, you'll be focused on family. At points, you'll have space in your life.
Yeah.
And you'll want to fill a void and do something else. So I think it swings around. But ultimately, you will still be anchored in those very early formative years' values. And I think values is a huge part that influences purpose.
It's interesting, mate. I read a book recently by Ryan Holiday, Discipline is Destiny. And he said something very similar to that. He said, life people, they're going to give you the opportunity. You can decline to accept it. Being disciplined is something you prove by the life that you lead. You've basically said those things as well. And you linked in discipline quite early on in it. I want to go to there because I personally think discipline is a huge factor of what you do with what life, surroundings, people that you were talking about, what they teach you. So why do you think some people react in one way and then some people react in a different way?
So I don't know if you've done StrengthsFinder, the 16 personality types, okay? But,
I fear those things.
Yeah. But do one.
Right.
So it's very interesting. So my character is what you call an ESTJ. So E is obviously extroverted, obvious,
Yes.
right? But then there are other components that come with that. But essentially, what it means is that I am a very manual observer. So if I observe you doing manual work and you're working hard and you're putting it in and you turn up at work every day, my interpretation of you is that you have a strong work ethic.
Right.
And I value that.
Right.
So I measure you basically by looking at you. You turn up every day, you're disciplined, you put the work in, and I love that.
Yeah.
Now, if I turn left and I see someone who comes in late, maybe not putting in the graft, putting in the hard work, I interpret that as lazy. And that's the absolute opposite of my personality type. So I don't like that. That would immediately cause conflict.
Yeah.
Right? I have to realize that personality type and how dominant that is in, for example, a work situation or a team situation or anything else.
Yeah.
And someone could have the polar opposite personality type, but it doesn't mean they're not working hard, right?
This is the problem, right?
Yeah. So we interpret that, and you and I may be very similar in that.
Yeah.
We interpret observing and manual work in terms of discipline.
Yeah.
Right? And if we don't see it, our brain tells us that person's not grafting. Right? So it's very difficult to judge the person using your own personality type. You have to be able to take yourself out of that.
Yeah.
And
That's
try
quite a
to put
skill though, right?
I think it's a skill, and that's why I very much admire football coaches, soccer coaches, all these guys, right? Because they're probably very manual, extroverted, disciplined, turn up on time, focused people.
Yes.
But they could have half a team of introverts in there, and they're still trying to impose strict team orders, strict team discipline, but bring everybody into the fold. So difficult.
That almost goes down the path of insanely good leadership, which is the ability to not cast your judgment on someone and not form an opinion on someone based on your own sort of personality type. You're taking them for what they are, but that's actually a skill that's quite uncommon these days, really. A lot of people, in leadership as well as in life, I think. Like a lot of people are looking at people, like you said, you and I will look at someone and we're looking for what resonates with us, and on a discipline level, on a purpose level. Mm-hmm. And if they don't have it, we fight to give them the time to prove themselves, but our default is actually a negative thought about the person, which is terrible.
Correct.
But good leadership and good humanity is actually to give them a chance to prove themselves.
Yeah, and the challenge there is not them. The challenge is you.
100%.
Right?
Mate,
so, or the challenge is me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the discipline then becomes, how disciplined can I be to be empathetic towards their natural personality type?
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that they're going to display full-on manual graft work, like let's get after it craziness, right? They're going to go and do their job in perhaps a quiet, silent, methodical way, right? And probably not shout about it, whereas I might be the guy who's shouting about it, making a drama about it, bigging it up, trying to bring everybody in and rah-rah the troops, and they're not interested.
Yeah.
So I think, again, going back to the original point of purpose, discipline, values, we have to see those in the context that we naturally are.
Yeah.
So I see them through my natural personality type, but I have to spend so much time understanding that lens.
Yeah.
Because if I see everything through that lens, then maybe nobody will live up to that.
Yeah.
Because you're judging them against your personality type. So it's my issue, not their issue.
I want to come back to that, but I want to ask you, do you personally feel that you understand what your purpose is, what you're here for, and where you're going?
Yeah, so the existential question, right? But we'll not go there. Yes, my answer is yes.
Yeah.
And my answer is for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a great book, a Steven Pinker book, right?
Yeah.
And he addresses kind of the existential question immediately, and he's obviously a humanist. And it's very focused about, we have to appreciate that we're here because there was millions of years of work before us that gave us the chance to be here.
Yeah.
And therefore our contribution is tomorrow and continuing that journey.
Yeah.
So for me, that's super simple. If you give me something simple, it doesn't have to be spiritual. I don't have to be linked to a bigger meaning other than tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's our obligation to leave the world better for everybody who's coming behind us, right?
Yeah.
So that's really easy for me to link my very simplistic ESTJ character to, right? It's like, okay, tomorrow. You have to leave the world in a better place. And what am I doing tomorrow?
Yes.
And I think that if you are a sentient being who has feelings and reason, then that's a very simplistic kind of purpose. So let's just be good today.
Yeah.
Let's role model today. Let's just be nice to everybody around us today.
Yeah.
And it will create a better tomorrow. Super simple. It doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be much more complicated than that.
And it will also leave today, like you said there, like probably one of our biggest purposes of humanity is to leave the place as good as we found it, or maybe a little bit better. So if we focus on today and having some sort of positive impact today or doing something good today, then we've closed the day out. And like you said, then we've paved it for tomorrow. So if we link back to what we were saying before, you're quite clear on that, which is good. And you like, we'll talk about it in more detail through the things that you do. You wake up every day with that in your mind. That's because you're E plus N plus 1 minus whatever on this scale. Now, not everyone is able to understand and articulate it in the way that you just have. Does that mean that they don't have a clear purpose, or does that mean that they can't explain their purpose to themselves and therefore to others?
Perhaps. Sometimes you're being fed someone else's purpose. Right? So you may be having a period in your week where you're attending a community that's feeding you someone else's agenda.
Yeah.
Right? You may be living someone else's purpose.
Yes.
Because that's the family that you're in.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot with, particularly late teens, where the teenager is being asked to choose their university, and they're living their parents' purpose.
Yeah.
There's many communities where the teenager will be feeling pressurized and pushed towards a certain discipline that's not their passion, that's maybe not even suited to their personality type.
Yeah.
But they're living someone else's purpose, and it might take them 10, 15, 30 years to get out of that, right?
Yeah.
To realize that wasn't my call. And I think when you have the opportunity to be clear on that, for me it's very simple. But if I look back over those years, we as kids have gone through many community groups. Whether that have been attending boys' brigades or scouts or football teams or whatever, where that community has an agenda and has a purpose.
Yes.
They might want to push you towards a certain spirituality or a certain doctrine, right? Which is maybe not your purpose, it's their purpose.
Yeah.
Right? So I would think that many people are living someone else's purpose.
But aren't we all then?
Could be, but I think the simpler you can make it, right? Like if my purpose is just tomorrow and just making other things better, I'm not necessarily having to implement a doctrine or a certain following or a certain rhythm. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If that purpose and that spirituality is your guiding light and your power and your energy and you're into that and you love it and it helps you get to tomorrow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not knocking it at all, but just be clear that it's yours as well, that you're buying into that as well. And millions upon millions and millions of people buy into that. And it is, their purpose and their mission.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because like you said a few minutes ago, you remember smells. And those smells have almost shaped you. And when something shapes you, it gives you direction and therefore it gives you sort of purpose. So essentially where we've got to quite quickly, I guess, is that everything around us is contributing to our purpose, to our shape, and is justified. I mean, that's really, obviously I looked up the definition, because when I thought about the topic and actually thought about someone who could have a good conversation, and that's why I messaged you. But then I looked at it, and the definition of a purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. So it's understanding the justification as to why we're actually doing something, which is actually a learned behavior. And then, and this is it's quite cathartic, this show, because I have to go into the topic. But then I was like, okay, I was thinking about my purpose and things that have led me to my purpose, and it's all external.
Yeah.
But then processed internally and a decision made. But they're all what I would call under learned behaviors.
Yeah.
So it goes directly into what you're saying, that actually my purpose and our purposes start off as someone else's or someone else's ideas.
Yeah.
But then, and this is where it becomes more interesting, I think, because then do we transform it or do we transcend it? I don't know, for it to become our own.
You interpret it and probably mold it and switch it. So
Yeah.
if you pulled that all the way back to I think what you do a great job of here, simply role modeling and making humans better at life, right? For tomorrow. But every step that you're taking in that, whether that's the endurance sport or the CrossFit side, right? Or just hanging out, drinking coffee, eating good food, essentially you're just role modeling good behavior for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's as simple again as I see it. So if I am bringing those values, which obviously have been formed on me from early life, I didn't choose someone else's values. They were theirs.
Yes.
They resonated with me, or I was formed in that way, and they've stayed with me. My memory of them are smells or music or times, right? But I still call upon them now. Another good example, right? I love the smell of shoe polish, right? So crazy as it sounds, but that smell of shoe polish is Sunday night, polishing your leather shoes, ready to go to school, and knowing that you are at that standard where that's how you go to school, right? So that smell is linked to, again, performance, discipline, taking care of yourself, right? The liniment smell is linked to sport, fun, we're getting after it, we're in a changing room. You know, the grass smell is let's get outside and adventure. So those things are all linked. I didn't choose them. That's formation. I just memorize and remember those things. So yes, you're clearly molding that and making that into a form of yourself, and that becomes your values now. And I think there's probably three things that then all come together. You probably have your values, and then your strengths, which grow up over time. And then you probably have the things you're passionate about, the things you care about. So going back to your point, you know, of what you have or what you've created here is probably a clear combination of those three things, right? It's your values that you grew up and were molded with, your strengths, which is obviously fitness and endurance and, you know, keeping fit and eating well and all of those things. And then what you care about, your passion. And in the middle of that sits your brand, your company, your community, your life. But it's sitting in the crossroads of those three things, you know?
Yes, it is. No, mate, you said a lot there, which is, I'm still processing the smells.
Yeah? Okay, give me some of yours then.
They're similar. Like when you think about, because I've never thought about it like that.
So think of those formative years.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
you
thinking,
were here.
I can see, like, you say boot polish, and before in prep school, I can tell you exactly where we polished our rugby boots, what the feeling was like, because it was in the changing rooms, and we had to, you know, then you have to clean the grass off them. And then, that's why I'm processing a lot at the moment, because then you say the smell of grass.
Okay, I'll give you another one. Before you polished them, you probably smashed your studs off the concrete, right?
That's exactly what
we
did. So
that noise of okay, I'll give you another one. There's two ways of there was two ways of smashing your boots or your studs off the ground. There was after the game. And then there was the stud noise as you ran out of the tunnel. Right? Two different noises. Two completely different sensory experiences. Two different parts of formation. Right? The pumped up feeling of the boots, the studs going off the concrete as you run out, versus the smacking the studs off the deck if you've lost. Right? And how you react to that and what the formation of that was around your mates, whether it was in the changing room, whatever, serves you today.
100%.
Right? But then if I replayed those noises now, closed your eyes, put that hat over your head,
you'd know.
And you would know instantly that was the boots being cleaned, or that was the boots running out onto the pitch, right?
100%.
But it's the same stud hitting the same piece of concrete.
But
you remember the clear difference in the noise. It's very clear to you. Right? So,
which is exactly what you said. All these things start to they start to program our brain, and they start to create. I think the two key things that we've spoken about, mate, they start to create purpose and they start to create discipline. I think it's interesting because although like I said, with the book that I recently read, there is a lot of links, but all of those things that we're talking about, actually one of the driving forces or the characteristic that goes through them is actually discipline. So there's now a strong intrinsic link from purpose and discipline. Or is it one of the same?
Or is it a strength? Right? So is your value discipline, and are you good at it?
Yeah.
And is it a strength? Right? And are you passionate about it?
Yeah.
As well? Do you even care?
Yeah.
Right? So they're all linked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's obviously a thread that runs through that. Yeah?
Yes.
And then it becomes to such an extent where it's autopilot.
Yeah.
But if you're spending time thinking about, okay, what are my values? Is discipline important to me?
Yes.
Okay. Am I good at that? Right? Is discipline one of my strengths? I.e., I will be disciplined about eating well, or I will be disciplined about getting up every day and drinking my water and doing those things.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a strength.
Yes.
And am I passionate about speaking about it for others?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it sits everywhere.
Yeah.
But there's more words than just discipline.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
But for me, then that all rolls up into what's tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
So then does that become role modeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what's your purpose?
Yeah.
So it all rolls up into, okay, what are you contributing for tomorrow?
Yes.
Right? So if those things are all rolled up together and you bring that aura or that presence or that sense of being around to contribute to tomorrow, then that becomes your purpose.
Then that becomes your purpose. Yeah. It's very technical. There's a lot of moving parts there, and 20 minutes in, people might be confused or might have already turned us off. Let's make it a little bit more practical, mate. And I want to try and link a little bit of what we've been talking about to something that you embarked on recently, which was a pretty solid bike ride around the country of Rwanda. Take us back to when that became a purpose for you and how the whole thing sort of started, mate.
So it's a really good question. So I was turning 50.
Yeah.
And I wanted, again, to be able to remember, that 50, right? That year of 50. So I was thinking, what could I squeeze into that year? You could actually squeeze in tons, right? So I wanted to be able to squeeze in that stuff into that year.
Right.
So I was going to run a marathon. That was clear in my head.
Yeah.
So that was picking a place and getting that done. And then I was thinking of what other things that I could do that I don't necessarily have, right? So there was lots going on at that time. So there was, people that we know running around ice sheets and parts of the Antarctic and, sharing lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess I was thinking, what can we do? And this race around Rwanda happened to pop up on my, I guess, across my screen, right?
As it does.
Yeah. And those red roads and, the images that they were showing, they just looked appealing. So I thought, let's give that a go.
Right.
So I entered. It was a crazy low price to enter this race, like a couple of $100 or something like that. And I entered it. No gravel bike, no clue, no nothing. Just it fitted within the diary, fitted within the calendar. It was in that year. So let's give this a go. And then we started a learning journey. That was it. That was the early part.
Did you think, like we spoke quite technically and quite deeply for the first 20 minutes that we've been chatting, mate. Was there a conscious application of those processes that you sort of explained at the start of the show to signing up for Rwanda? Or was it like I think what you explained there, without being insulting, is quite superficial stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I was 50, I wanted to do something. Like, it's a really nice story, mate. Yeah. So I don't want to sound. But what was there a stage where your purpose comes into it, or is it just so subconsciously programmed to you now that you just know? It's like it could go to a gut feeling kind of.
I think it's there.
Yeah.
So if that constant of doing stuff is always there,
then
that superficiality comes back.
Yes.
Right? Because there was an acceptance, I guess, subconsciously, that I'm going to do stuff.
Yes.
Right? Because for me, that's living.
That's what you are.
Yeah. Role modeling, doing, having that sense of purpose. There's a value that you're going to do something, right?
Yes.
So then what is that something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
exactly.
for some, it could be that something is just massive and I'm going to work to that something.
Yes.
And it's all consuming and it's that thing. I guess for me, it was just something else, right?
Nice.
It's like, what can I squeeze into that 12 months?
Yeah.
And it wasn't so massive, I guess. It didn't feel like that at the time. Going into it felt like, wow. But it was also, it could be squeezed into that 12-month period.
Yeah.
And there still is loads going on in this 12-month period, right?
I was going to say, mate, we're in March.
Yeah, we've still got another few months to go. Who knows what's going to happen? But it just felt like it could be done.
Yeah.
You know? But it was big enough to I guess, take part in all of those pieces. I felt like I could do something different. But it wasn't a conscious effort to say, oh, what can I do to
advance my purpose?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was just like, what can I do to?
Because it's quite interesting, isn't it? I think, obviously, we deal a lot with people that sign up for these sorts of challenges. And a lot of people, the reason for signing up, or the reason for whether it's the challenge itself or the training program, is to go on what I would say is, without sounding cheesy, is quite a self-discovery journey, like it is. And that's okay, because a lot of people come to the party quite lost. Yeah. But you've come to the party quite focused, and this is you just know that this piece of going and riding a bike around Rwanda fits in with the driving forward, the leaving today better than it was, preparing for tomorrow, because your purpose is so clear in your mind.
Yeah, I would agree. It just becomes part of another thing. You know, it doesn't become the focus.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not all consuming.
Yeah.
To the detriment of everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
Which forms part of your purpose. And I think that probably became the challenge, right? Because if you go back to your values, making sure you spend time with friends, community, family, building all of those things in, but you've picked something of that kind of
magnitude.
It's big. It can become all-consuming, right? So that balance of how do I still make sure that everything that's of importance to me gets all of that time? Because we always say, if you're going to enter something like, you know, an Ironman or a marathon or something big, that you're sacrificing so much time to get the big goal done that something else gives.
Yeah.
For me, that was probably the challenge.
Yeah.
Right? Because the other things are so important as well, that you want to be able to give time to the other things that are important to you and not compromise any of those. Right?
Did you?
No, I think you'd have to ask others. You'd have to ask others.
We'll have to get the big boss on from the UK.
I probably have to reflect on that a bit more. You know, I think circumstance, which is not ideal, is lending itself to me being able to have more time to throw into that.
Yeah.
So would I choose the circumstance? Absolutely not.
Yeah, for sure.
But the circumstance of time that I have at the moment and over the last 12 months probably lend itself to that.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, timing, circumstance, being able to to give time to the training and do those things? Perhaps. Probably have to reflect on it a lot more.
It's interesting because a lot of people use the phrase there like all-consuming, and they move into not just, I don't think it's just endurance challenges. I think it's certain sections of life that actually become all-consuming and also force them to sacrifice in other areas. And we do that because we believe at some stage the thing that we've made the sacrifice, that in this case, the race around Rwanda, is going to give us something. But in the end, because we've made so many sacrifices in this other area, we lose.
Yeah.
You know, and I see it a lot, mate. And to bring that to a little bit of a more practical example for people come and see us because maybe they've got issues in other areas of life. They're not happy in work. They're not happy in their family. And this Ironman or this race around Rwanda or this ultra marathon is going to fix it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. Yeah,
because it takes us back to the first point of purpose, right?
Exactly.
So, you know, yes, sometimes, and I see people joining this community or being around that are looking for the key to unlock the door.
Yeah.
And they think that key is at the end of the race or it's at the end of something. It's not there.
No.
Right?
It's nothing there.
That crock of gold is not at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
So it's way before that. And so for me, doing the stuff is just part of the purpose, of the values, of the passions.
Yeah.
And the adventure is the crossroads in the middle of all that.
Yeah.
But that adventure could be anything.
Yes.
Right? And you see that a lot. People go from the adventure of team sport or the adventure of hanging out with their mates at the golf course or the adventure of bike riding or running. That part that sits in the middle between the values, the strength and the passion can change.
Yeah, of course.
You know, as life changes.
It's just a different vehicle.
Correct. I just think it's the conduit that sits in the middle that allows you to spend time. I'll tell you that the great part about Rwanda was the time that you have on your own to think about those things, right? The clarity that it brings, but it's not the key to the gate of the magic.
No.
It's just giving yourself the time to reflect on what are your strengths, what are your passions, what are your values, what's important to you, what's not.
Yeah.
For me, that 6 days of getting 16 hours a day, sitting on your own, cranking up a hill, you know, the clarity that you get in that time, you know, is priceless.
So did you come back, do you feel that you came back with more clarity in your life?
Yes, definitely. I think it re-emphasized a lot of points.
Yep.
I think it helps to clarify a lot of strengths, you know. It helps to solidify some of those values and things that were important to you. You can see them clearly, you know, what you wouldn't give up, what you wouldn't compromise, what you are really passionate about. So yeah, I think it does. And it also helps you to realize what things are absolutely irrelevant. Yeah? And there's tons of those.
That's going to be my next question, mate, because you were in a place that for both mentally and physically for long periods of time was super straightforward, very, let's call it basic compared to the modern world that we live in. But then you come back to the modern world and, you know, your office is still your office, your house is still your house, and these things. How did you deal with that contrast? Because it's you realize in more simple situations that we're oversubscribed to things on many, many different levels, but then you have to plug yourself back into it.
Yeah. But what helped me was that simplicity of what is important, right? So obviously the complete materialism that we're surrounded by, you know, and that we live in, and this, you know, this drive to make people buy more, spend more, purchase more, drive the economy, all of those kind of things. It's very interesting to live in on a daily basis, but it's very interesting to observe as an outsider. So I felt like when I was riding around Rwanda that I was observing that function that I'm in and what that's doing to society. Yeah, look, we have to plug ourselves back into that. That's where we are. That's what we're living in. But you can see how easy the world can live without all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were in a very, very overpopulated country.
Yeah.
So we were never, ever, ever like 500 meters from humanity.
Right.
There was always people around.
Right.
In fact, I can clearly remember, again, going back to sights and smells, there was a moment where I actually stopped the bike and I said, there's just no people around. This is amazing. I just need to stop
Have a minute
and just look around. And as I looked around, there was a guy up a tree. I said, I just can't escape. There's just people everywhere.
Right.
And we were in the middle of the countryside.
Amazing.
But this country is just super populated, right? So whenever you get that moment to breathe, that moment to think, that moment of peace, to realize, yeah, that we probably have consumed way too much. We're probably just wasting tons of stuff. But then, yeah, I come back into it and it becomes my day job, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have that, at least you have that moment of reflection and reality check. And I had 6 days to think about that. It was a long time.
I guess one of the more stock standard questions, mate, is we've spoken about some of the outcomes of it and processing thoughts. What was perhaps more of the challenging side of it? Like, were there points where you were either extremely mentally challenged, physically challenged, and maybe how you dealt with that? And do you link it back to this great sense of self-awareness that you have?
I got a big slap. I think we were 4 days into it.
Yeah.
And it's the most vivid memory of the race. I got way ahead of myself, and I was literally pumping. I got to the top of this hill. I said, "This is done. That's the climb for the day done.
Yeah.
We're going downhill today." You know, I was way at this race is done.
Yeah.
It's over. I've got 2 days to go. And I was laughing. I was kind of like, this is done. And I went over the crest of a hill, 8K down this hill, probably at 40K an hour, loving going down the hill. And my Garmin went orange and I'd gone off route.
Right.
And literally that was elation and a slap within 20 minutes.
Really?
And I stopped the bike. I looked at the map. I'd gone off course and I had to turn the bike around and get back up that hill. And it put me way behind.
Wow.
And again, if I go back to formation years,
Yeah.
it was a clear instruction from, you know, my grandparents or my uncles or whoever was around you at the time. Maybe you had this said to you as a kid, you know, don't get too big for your boots, don't
Yeah.
get cocky, don't get ahead of yourself. And I did.
Yeah.
And I got that slap. And it's funny because life has a way of, you know, giving you that slap and bringing you back down. And then that day turned into probably the worst afternoon I had, you know, for that 2 minutes of elation.
Wow.
1 minute of celebration gave me a 7 or 8 hour slap. You know,
So what do we do then, mate? We don't celebrate?
No, it's not getting ahead of yourself.
Right.
So it's keeping that in check.
Yeah.
You know, I could have definitely said, you know, well done. You got up there, you
Yeah.
climbed that 2,500 meters, you're up. You know, you've broken the back of it.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? What's the little next bit? Right?
Because you're still halfway through the race.
Yeah, you still have half the race to go.
Yeah.
You know, it's that cockiness, that slap that brings you back down again. And it's funny because the world just has a way of doing that.
Yeah.
So it just did it. It's, there you go, boom. And then
So how did you recover from it?
probably not well.
Right.
So I was riding with a great guy, Josh.
Yeah.
He was waiting for me. I had obviously missed him. I went over the crest of this hill and piled on down the hill, and he had turned right properly onto the trail. So I called him, left him a message, said, you plow on. He wanted to get off that trail before it was dark.
Yeah.
So then I had to slog back up the hill.
Oh.
I should have stopped and taken on board fuel.
Yeah.
Topped up my water. I didn't. I ploughed straight into the trail,
Wow.
thinking I'll just get through this.
Yeah.
And then I got hit by the biggest, you know, torrential storm that could ever come across at that time, and then had to hunker down in a bivvy bag for a while, and then move from shelter to shelter just to get out of that trail.
Wow.
So that's what I mean. I mean, I just took the slap for that extra hour.
I'm sure you appreciated the smell of a fresh rainstorm, though.
Ah, amazing smell, right? You know the smell of rain on tarmac?
Yeah.
Yeah? That kind of triggers memories. You know,
Yeah.
if the sun's been baking all day on the tarmac and then you get this massive rainstorm,
Yeah.
again, it has that.
So were you able to find some solace in that pretty horrendous situation because of that, or what lifted you up, mate?
I honestly, I was laughing. I was laughing because you're getting slapped here.
Yeah.
Right? It's that you need to take this now.
Yeah.
So I was laughing. I moved from shelter to shelter. I ended up being in this kind of like house, mud hut home. A family took me in this middle of this torrential storm, and the people were just lovely, right? So here I am now pushing myself probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours behind where I should be. But people have been lovely. They've taken me in. They've sheltered me. So I was just laughing. You know, I was probably naturally calm.
Yeah.
Just thinking, okay, this is what you've been dealt. You just
Yeah.
need to get through it. It's now going to be very, very dark when you finish today. But when you get there, you'll get there. You know, so you just have to take this. This is the slap you've been given. That's exactly how I interpreted it.
It's when it goes, it's false summits, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, big time.
So how did you get through the next 2 days? Did you carry it, or
No.
by the time you'd got through the evening, the rain, it was done?
Yeah, look, I got to the checkpoint that night at midnight.
Yeah.
Just close to midnight. They served up some slop of stuff.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah, some slop of stuff. And I had messaged Josh and said, tomorrow's the last day. We'll leave at 4 again.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was asleep, but I knew he would be there at 4 because we were leaving at 4 a.m. every day.
Right.
So yeah, I slept, woke up the next day, and let's just get on with it. That was that day. You know, that was the slap of that day. I saw it as clearly my mistake. Clearly, I caused it.
Yeah.
I had to take the punishment for that. It was dealt with. Closed the eyes, slept, got up the next day and got on with it.
That's quite a solid skill set, though, mate, to be able to, and maybe it's isolated within that race, because the reality is if you'd have carried it, it could have sort of jeopardized your chances of completing the race or something like that. Do you think that's a product of your personality and knowing who you are, and knowing, if we link it back, knowing your purpose? Because we see a lot of people that carry things for a number of days and they take it into the next day. So how are you able to do that in life? Are you able to, today was today, we'll move till tomorrow? Does it fit in with what you said, that we're just preparing for the next day, or how do you put that together?
Could be experience. Could be, right? So there.
Wait till I'm 50.
Yeah, you have to wait a few more years. But look, I can remember clearly parts in my early, I would say, work life.
Yeah.
Right, where I would have gone in to do a presentation or a meeting, and I felt that the proposal was a slam dunk. Didn't go well. Didn't happen. And
Yeah.
I would maybe carry that rejection or that resentment for a week, for a month, like.
Wow.
Blaming the person who's rejected it, who's turned it down. Like,
Right, so it wasn't your fault.
It was never my fault,
No,
right?
no.
But I was 23, 24,
Yeah.
25, and like I was the best salesman in the world, and
course.
why did they not buy it?
Yeah.
You know, it's his problem. He doesn't see life the right way, blah, blah, blah. Clearly wrong, right?
Yeah.
Clearly wrong. So obviously now I'm at a point where it was my fault. You know, so if I choose to then carry the energy of that resentment, if I choose to carry that monkey on my shoulder, who's going to suffer? Me,
Yeah.
right? Like, nobody else did anything wrong in the situation except me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same if you are giving a presentation, giving a proposal, trying to persuade someone another way. It's incumbent on you.
Yes.
It's not their problem. It's not their fault. They didn't cause it.
Yeah.
So what did I have to give up? I had to give up 2, maybe 3 hours sleep.
Yep.
I went over the crest of the hill. It was my fault. I have to deal with it. It's on me.
Amazing.
Right? And I think once you know that, then it's on you. Right? It's like, but yeah, I have a few years on you, right? So
I hope more people can think like that. You said something, mate, about coming back when we were talking a little bit about sort of coming back into society. And one of the things that you probably noticed a big difference from, although you've been calling Josh, so you had tech there. But I think something that worries me slightly, or that doesn't worry me so much, but I think about quite a lot, is how tech is disrupting perhaps our ability to understand who we really are. Did you notice it more when you came back, when you'd been in a race and quite sort of submersed in a different environment, and then, you back at work, emails start going, WhatsApp's blowing up, there's all sorts of different things invading you?
Way before that. Honestly, it's a huge concern of mine.
Yeah.
So when I think of everything that we've talked about, those formative years, that sense of community, sense of values, when I see how much screen time, lonely time, lack of play that's happening because tech is everywhere, and it does concern me. And I say that as someone who spends, pretty much all day in the education, training, leadership business, right? I think that, again, if I think of those early formative years, lots of that stuff's been taken away, and parents now have to work really, really hard to put their kids into environments where they are getting that sense of camaraderie, hearing those noises, getting those smells, building that value and trying to put their kids in situations where they can find their passion, where they can build their values, where they can build their strengths, because tech is in the way so much. So it's such a massive enabler. Like, if I think how easily we navigated in Rwanda with this Garmin, solar powered map, right? Simple, right? I mean, how could I not follow that? How did I manage to go 8K off route? I mean, that's clearly on me.
Yeah.
But also, if we had to do that when I did my Duke of Edinburgh with a map and a compass, probably would have been really much more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah? I mean, I'd love to go back and do it just with a map.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're not allowed to laminate it. It has to be paper. Get on with it. But yeah, we've made it so much easier to go and do that.
Do you think some of those noises that we spoke about, for example, the studs on the concrete, what's the equivalent for kids these days, and what would they be sat here in 20 to 30 years? Because is it the noise that, I don't know, what's the Fortnite or whatever they play? Is
Minecraft or something.
Minecraft. Right? Is it that noise that resonates with them, mate? And does that start to drive their purpose of being? Is that what drives? Because that's the environment they're in. We've talked a lot about the environments that we've been in that lead us to have the personalities that we are, that influence us in certain ways. When we look at tech and that influence, like, you see it now. Like, people will sit, even adults will sit in a meeting and they don't even notice when their phone is making a noise.
Yeah.
And I'm literally just about to explode.
Yeah.
It shouldn't bother me, but it does. So for kids, is the conversation that we've had around the studs on the concrete, does it become a conversation around the ping and the pang that a phone or a device makes? Is that wrong? Is it right?
That could be the new community. It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be two kids sat here in another 30, 40 years talking about, remember when your jelly bean was bouncing off the screen and you were building, We probably remember, to be fair, the sound of the Atari tennis ball noise, right?
Mate,
with the original
Mario Kart. Yeah, of course.
Those kind of noises, right? Thankfully, the draw of the appeal and the allure of the draw of going to the changing room to smack the studs off the deck was way more appealing than playing a rubbish Atari game, right?
For sure.
But there could be someone sat here in 30, 40 years having the same memories, but talking about Minecraft.
Yeah.
And they may be building the same community values,
Yeah.
but with their headphones on and networking with someone somewhere else in the world.
Yes.
And we get out of this okay.
Yeah.
Right? It may happen. You know, I think the proof will be in the pudding. But we're talking about a different era, a different point in time, you know, different noises, different smells. But maybe those values, those strengths, those passions will play out again, but they were just built and formed through a different conduit. Yeah. And the conduit is the screen.
Yeah.
Do I believe that will happen? No. But it may play out that way. We'll not know until that point in time. You'll need to send me a message.
Yeah. The last question I have for you, mate, is if you understand your purpose, if you have a good decision-making process, you have discipline, which is what all of this conversation is really about. At what point does life become less exciting and more premeditated because you have a system? You have done your personality types. You know what your code is and how you're going to react. Does there come a point where things are a little bit too premeditated and not spontaneous enough?
No, use the word exciting. That's a choice, right? So I think there's a massive difference between excitement and calmness and approach. Yeah, but there are tons of stuff that you can still get excited about.
Yeah,
but know what it's going towards, right? So I don't think that that changes anything. My biggest takeaway from Rwanda is naivety overcoming fear, right? So if I had, and I said this to Rob Jones, if I had known what I know about Rwanda before I went, if I had properly read the athlete guide, because I don't properly read anything, right? I probably would have had a second thought about it, because I would have been fearful, right? But the naivety of just going, you know, and not properly comprehending what it said in there. For example, it said, technical MTB downhill route. I have no idea what that means, right? If I had known properly what that means,
yes,
I'd have been not ready for this.
Yeah.
I'd have been in fear.
Yeah.
The naivety of like, oh, I'm going downhill. That's all that means. Yeah. Forget all the other words. All I saw was I'm going downhill. So I expect to be going nicely downhill through this beautiful jungle and sightseeing, right? It was nothing like that. But that naivety, that excitement, right, was beautiful. Yeah. So you can still have all of that, but you can approach it calmly because you've got a bit more experience. Yeah. And you know why you're going there. Yeah. So, you know.
The ultimate Bruce Lee, be like water, my friend. That's the book of his daughter, Shannon Lee, which talks about that just being like water, but he still has an amazing amount of discipline, but the water can come and it can flow and it's not rigid. Yeah. And that's actually what life should be, because it allows for some easy movement of the water, which is exactly what you said, and it allows for that excitement, but it's rooted, it's got solid foundations. Yeah. And it's got discipline, and it's got purpose, and it's got values, and then it can just flow.
Yeah, it can just flow. Look, we were excited last week, right, to do a simple thing. Just go out and explore somewhere new.
Yeah.
Go out and find something that hasn't been mapped before. And I was excited about that.
Yeah.
The stomach, the butterflies were up. Yeah. You know, but calmly, we know we're just going to go out for a cycle and come back. And it's part of what we do. Yeah. Right? But when we put that new stuff out there and get excited about it and choose to do something different, excitement's still there. Yeah. It doesn't go away.
No.
You know, so, yeah.
Fantastic. Jeff, thank you so much, mate. Lots of super interesting, and I think maybe people that are listening, I don't know what they'll think about what we've spoken about for the last hour. Maybe they'll have more to think about, less to think about. But mate, thank you for packaging it so well and sharing your experiences with us. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Nice to join you.